A thin, cautious man stepped onto a Welsh beach in August 1485, with fewer soldiers than his enemy and more to lose than anyone in England. In 3 weeks, he'd kill a king, marry his rival's niece, and found a dynasty that still shapes Britain. He was Henry VII, quiet, careful, and absolutely not boring. If Henry VIII is fireworks, Henry VII is the fuse. Less noisy, more important. He ended the Wars of the Roses, stabilised money and justice, built a more organised system of royal government, used propaganda like a pro, and set up the marriages and trade that made the Tudors powerful. And yes, he loved a lavish spectacle. I'm author and historian Claire Ridgway, and let me tell you more about Henry VII, the first Tudor monarch. Henry Tudor was born in 1457 at Pembroke to Lady Margaret Beaufort and Edmund Tudor, who died just before his birth. From childhood, his fate was caught up in the dangerous politics of the Wars of the Roses. In 1471, when the Yorkists regained the throne, he fled with his uncle Jasper, first to Brittany, then to the French court. He spent 14 years in exile, where he learnt to watch, to listen, and to wait. But in the summer of 1485, backed by France, he landed at Milford Haven, gathered Welsh support, and met Richard III at Bosworth on the 22nd of August 1485. With timely help from the Stanleys, Henry's force was victorious, and Richard died fighting. Henry took the crown, then dated his reign from the day before Bosworth so that his enemies were retroactively traitors. Cunning. Henry married Elizabeth of York, daughter of Edward IV, in 1486. It was smart politics and effective branding. The houses of Lancaster and York united, the red and white roses coming together as the Tudor rose. He faced two major rebellions, Lambert Simnel 1487, defeated at Stoke, and Perkin Warbeck 1490s, a pretender claiming to be Richard Duke of York. Warbeck was paraded, questioned, and eventually executed in 1499. Henry was a master of diplomacy, and he knew just how costly war could be. The Treaty of Medina del Campo, 1489, secured a Spanish alliance and Prince Arthur's marriage to Catherine of Aragon. The Treaty of Etaples, 1492, bought peace with France and a pension. Intercursus Magnus, 1496, restored trade with Burgundy. The opportunistic Malus Intercursus, 1506, squeezed even more briefly. He turned diplomacy into revenue. And when it came to justice, he leant on conciliar courts, including a revitalised Star Chamber, to tackle overmighty subjects and standardise power after decades of chaos. Now, the stereotype says miser, and that's certainly the Henry VII I learnt about at school. But he was more a manager. Henry centralised finance in his private chambers, watched customs like a hawk, and used bonds and recognizances to keep powerful nobles loyal and the crown solvent. But Henry also knew how to have a good time. He threw extravagant parties, complete with dazzling pageantry, knights, dragons, and even castles on wheels. He partied in style, but he made sure that he could afford it. And while his court dazzled with pageants and careful politics, Henry was also quietly shaping the England his children would inherit. In 1489, he introduced the new gold sovereign, a symbol of royal majesty that you could quite literally hold in your hand. In 1495, at Portsmouth, he established the first modern dry dock, laying the foundations for England's future navy. In 1497, explorers from Bristol, led by John Cabot, set sail for what they called the New Found Lands, taking England's first cautious steps into the Atlantic world. And at Westminster, Henry poured his vision and money into the magnificent Henry VII Lady Chapel, a masterpiece of late Gothic design, the perfect monument to a king who prized order, beauty and legacy. Small steps perhaps, but ones that shaped the England that his son would inherit. Henry VII also thought carefully about the future of his dynasty. His children were key to his long game. His eldest son Arthur was married to Catherine of Aragon, sealing England's alliance with Spain. When Arthur died in 1502, that alliance didn't end. It passed on to his younger brother, the future Henry VIII, who would later marry Catherine himself. Henry VII's eldest daughter, Margaret Tudor, was married to James IV of Scotland, a match that looked risky at the time, but would one day unite the crowns of England and Scotland through their great-grandson, James VI, James I. Every marriage was a move in a carefully thought-out game of dynastic chess. Henry knew that lasting security came not just from battles or treaties, but from family ties woven across Europe. Of course, even the most careful plans can't guard against heartbreak. In 1502, Henry's beloved eldest son Arthur died at just 15, and the following year Elizabeth of York passed away after childbirth. She was only 37. Those losses changed Henry. The court grew quieter, the king more withdrawn, and his once celebratory household became a place of calculation and caution. Yet behind the grief, Henry continued to work. He tightened the crown's finances, kept the peace, and ensured that his surviving son would inherit a kingdom strong, solvent, and secure. When Henry VII died at Richmond Palace on the 21st of April 1509, he left behind not just wealth and order, but a dynasty ready to shine. His son Henry VIII would take the crown of a united and stable realm, one built on his father's foundations. Before we leave Henry VII, let's take a moment to tackle a few of the myths that still cling to him. He's often dismissed as a boring miser, the king in his counting house, while everyone else partied. But the truth is more balanced. Henry was careful with money, yes, but that caution rebuilt England after decades of war. And when it came to image, he knew the power of display. Pageants, jewels, feasts, and a chapel that still takes your breath away. Frugal perhaps, but never joyless. Then there's the idea of his weak claim. On paper, it wasn't the strongest, but he was the senior surviving claimant of the House of Lancaster by August 1485. And Henry understood that a crown isn't held by birth alone. It's secured by victory, by marriage, and by time. By the end of his reign, few questioned that he was the rightful king of England. Another myth is that Henry left no navy for his son. In truth, he laid the groundwork, establishing a royal dockyard at Portsmouth and investing steadily in ships. Henry VIII's famous navy didn't appear out of thin air. It was built on his father's quiet foundations. And finally, some say that Henry lacked imagination, that he was a small thinker. Yet his trade deals, his careful diplomacy, even John Cabot's westward voyage, all show a king looking beyond his own shores. He may not have been a warrior like Henry V or an icon like his youngest son, but he was a strategist, and his vision reached far further than most give him credit for. So why does Henry VII matter? Because he's the quiet architect of the Tudor world. Everything that followed, Henry VIII's grandeur, Elizabeth I's golden age, rests on the foundations that he built. He ended the chaos of the Wars of the Roses, balanced the crown's finances, and restored faith in stable government. He showed that power didn't have to roar to be effective. His strength was in patience, calculation, and an understanding of people, traits his more famous son could have learnt from. If you understand Henry VII, you understand how England turned the page from medieval turmoil to a confident, centralised Tudor state, ready to look outward to Europe and soon across the Atlantic. He may not have been the most dramatic of kings, but he was one of the most important, and to me, one of the most fascinating. If I had to recommend one book on him, well, you can't go wrong with Nathan Armin's Son of Prophecy. So what surprised you most about Henry VII? Was it the castle on wheels and disguisings, the clever diplomacy, or how quietly he shaped England's future? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this look at the first Tudor king, do make sure you're subscribed, because my next beginner's video will be on Henry VIII, that icon of a king. I'll see you very soon. Take care. Bye bye.